Husband's past caught up and now his estranged daughter needs us, but he's refusing due to crippling guilt and fear. I'm sitting here, trying to process the aftermath of a fight with my husband, a fight in which he called me an asshole, among other things. Everything feels chaotic and emotions are boiling over. I need a sanity check, maybe some new ways to see things, because every conversation seems to go in circles. Here's what's going on. My husband had a daughter back in his early 20s, with an ex-girlfriend. They were a horrible match, constantly fighting, emotionally abusive with each other, and by the time the child was about to arrive, they'd already split. He never sugarcoated any of this with me, he's always been candid about how much he regrets not being more careful and how young and foolish he was back then. He never managed to really have a relationship with his daughter. Her mother basically kept him at arm's length, making it clear time and again that he wasn't welcome in their lives. All these years, he's paid child support, but every step has been uphill. I met him after he'd grown up a lot, and when we got together, he was finally ready to start a family. I've watched the complications from a bit of a distance. When our first baby was born, his ex swooped in, demanding more child support. Her argument was, if he can afford a new kid, he can afford to pay up. She's always venomous in any interaction, and she's poisoned their daughter's view of him. He's tried, at least during the holidays, to get a phone call. But last Christmas, their daughter unleashed awful words on him, called him a deadbeat, said she hated him, never wanted anything to do with him. She's 13, and while I believe her mother's still shaping her view, she's also old enough that I can't just excuse it all as childish parroting. The cruelty hit deeply, and my husband's spirit finally broke. He gave up trying, none of them wanted him around, so what was the point? A few days ago, though, everything flipped. He got a call saying his daughter told a teacher she was being SA'd at home. CPS stepped in, her mother disappeared, gone without a trace, and now they want his daughter to stay with us. But my husband wants to say no. He doesn't have a relationship with her, she hates his guts, we have little kids, and we're completely unprepared for something as traumatic as this. He honestly thinks she'd be better with a foster family, the kind trained to help kids coming out of that sort of misery. But my heart is shredded for this girl. How can I stand by and watch her get abused and abandoned, then stuck again with more rejection, this time from the only family she has left? I told him there's no way we're letting her get tossed around the system after all this. She needs some stability, she needs us, we'll figure out the rest as we go. But right now, he's standing firm, saying he can't do it, and he has the final say because I'm just his partner and not blood related to his daughter. Am I wrong to believe that this is a huge, blaring sign that he has to step up, to be a father, even if he's scared and overwhelmed? Am I being unreasonable, demanding too much in this impossible moment? I know, technically, I have no legal voice in this, but my opinion carries weight in our marriage. We're a team, this family is our shared project. Neither of us knows much about the foster system. Everything I think I know is just what I've gathered in bits and pieces. Maybe I'm wrong on some things, and I'm grateful for every shred of new information that's come my way. And yes, my husband was a deadbeat dad at the start. He's come to realize he and his ex were oil and water, but he's admitted that he could have tried harder, even if building that bridge felt impossible. Once visiting became an option, he did try, but every time, she forgot, wasn't home, or argued about the date. Maybe he should have taken it to court, but he just gave up in the end. Looking back, I see things could have gone differently, but hindsight won't change what's happening now. Mini update, we finally sat down together and tried to talk, not about the issue itself, but about why the discussion spiraled out of control in the first place. He opened up about feeling absolutely overwhelmed, panicked even. Apparently, when CPS called, it felt like he was being told he either had to take his daughter in or she'd end up chewed up and spit out by the system. The guilt is crushing him. Even if she hates him, he feels he should have done more to protect his kid, and the knowledge that he failed her is eating him alive. I know now that I was so laser focused on how broken his daughter must be that I overlooked how tormented he was feeling, too. We agreed to step back, breathe, and sleep on it before picking the issue up again. We cleared our schedules for tomorrow, planning to gather more information, to have the talk we need in the morning, one that's not dripping with pain or panic. It's nearly 2 a.m., and I'm exhausted, but I'm holding on to hope. I desperately want to be writing a positive update soon. Update 1. Things are pretty hectic right now, but I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who has offered support, advice, and even shared their own experiences. I won't go into every detail, but I can say with certainty there's so much more happening beneath the surface than what I can share here. Divorce is absolutely not on the table for us. My husband and I have endured several very difficult conversations over these past few days, but once the initial panic subsided, we realized we were much more aligned than we first believed. My husband made the decision to step forward and take responsibility for his daughter. He's actively pursuing emergency custody so she doesn't end up lost in the system. Just to be clear, we're not forcing a family dynamic on anyone. He's going to take legal guardianship, but she won't be living with us for now. Instead, we found an inpatient therapy clinic that can take her in and begin the healing process. My husband is taking leave from work and leasing a second car so he can go back and forth and be there for her as much as either she or her doctor wants. He fully understands she may never see him as her father, or even as family, but from now on, we are her support system. She will never again have to rely on a stressed out, overworked CPS contact, random legal guardians, or homes that keep changing. If she needs therapy, we'll provide it. If she needs legal advice, we'll make it happen. If she chooses the system, we'll help her through it. If she wants to live with a foster family, we won't stand in her way. We plan to make it absolutely clear, to her and to everyone involved, that our support is not contingent on her pretending to be family or accepting us as hers. She never has to even come to our home if that's how she feels. She might never appreciate any of what we do, and we've made our peace with that. We have some savings we can dip into, and we're opening a college fund for her, not enough to make her rich, but hopefully enough to help cover some costs down the line. Family therapy starts soon, so we can start telling our own kids about their sister and prepare them for the reality that dad will be away a lot more for a while. My husband will also start individual therapy to work on the guilt and pain this has brought him. I'll admit, the initial rush of advice was hard to absorb, but ultimately it opened my eyes to just how naive I was being. I know this will be incredibly hard, but we finally have some sort of plan, some direction amidst all this chaos. Most of this is only theoretical at this point, but I'm determined to see it through. Update 2. I can't go into too many details, but I'm deeply grateful for the kind people who've reached out to help and offer advice. We didn't abandon my stepdaughter in a mental hospital indefinitely. She was admitted to a care facility staffed by professionals who could assess her health in depth and start us on a path toward real healing. My husband was by her side as much as she or her doctors wanted him to be. Her mother eventually showed up as well. There's now a criminal investigation underway, and, with her therapist's support, my stepdaughter has testified. I am so incredibly proud of her, and I hope this gives her a stepping stone forward. She lives with us now, and we're working closely with professionals to figure out how to make this new reality work. It's far from perfect. It's not easy. It isn't fun. But it's absolutely the right thing for us, and I wouldn't change it for anything. And for the record, at every stage we sat down with her and asked what she wanted. Nothing has or will ever be forced on her. Update 3. Last September, I found myself reaching out for help after a massive argument with my husband. Our world had been completely turned upside down. His daughter from a previous relationship, let's call her Anne, revealed that she'd been subjected to things no child should endure, and her mother simply vanished. It was as if every terrible thing that could have happened, did. In all honesty, I never imagined my life would turn like this: police, lawyers, therapy, and that gnawing feeling that your whole world can crumble overnight. But above it all, the most important thing became Anne, what she wanted, needed, and how we could support her. Every single step of the way, we consulted her. We made sure she was always in control of the pace and decisions about her life. Financially, we'd been lucky to have a solid foundation, and thankfully, my in-laws stepped up to help. Still, it's cost us, emotionally, physically, and yes, a fair bit of money too. Now, I have some bad news to get out of the way first. Anne's mother and her boyfriend surfaced eventually, and now there's a trial looming. I can't get into every gritty detail, but I truly believe my husband was one heartbeat away from landing in jail himself. His rage was that palpable. Anne, thank heavens, only had to testify via video and didn't have to step foot in that courtroom in front of them. My husband was right there for her, but only because she allowed him to be. Her therapist was attentive. At one point, he even suspected that Anne had been drugged on occasion and alerted us and the police. After hearing this, my husband actually came home and started researching how to buy a gun. No, we didn't get one, not with toddlers in the house, but you can probably imagine his level of fury and desperation. As it stands, there's no way Anne's mom and her boyfriend will get what I believe would be fitting justice. They'll probably serve some time, but nowhere near what they deserve. But, thankfully, therapy has been making a difference. There've been some intense sessions, Anne and her dad together, working through everything that's been said and unsaid. These are tough hours for both of them, but I can see glimmers of hope peeking through. Anne now lives with us, something that began once she felt ready, after spending a brief period in inpatient care. We cleared out our old office, transforming it into her space, and fitted the door with the largest lock we could find. It's mostly symbolic, but it's her safe place, and she alone decides when it's closed or locked. My only household requests are that she keeps it reasonably tidy and doesn't bring smoking or drugs inside. She's always invited to meals but never forced. I make sure there's plenty if she decides to eat later. Those first months, we hardly saw her. It was like living with a ghost, which the family therapist warned us might happen and was totally normal. My husband reorganized his work schedule so that one of us is always home, unless we're all out together as a family. No one pushes Anne to interact with her step-siblings, but she's mostly neutral towards them, which for now is a win. We adopted a strict rule: no touching others without permission. Sometimes the kids forget, swept up in excitement, but Anne's been patient and cool about it. Just the other week, my little boy raced to the TV where Anne was watching her show and started demanding his favorite cartoon. I told him no, and has the remote right now, but, to my surprise, she offered to let him pick the show, and they ended up watching together. He was over the moon, and after a second episode, I finally had to drag him away so Anne could have her turn again. I made sure to thank her and remind her she never has to give up her spot, but she just smiled and said she didn't mind. So that's where we're at. And isn't skipping school any more than the average teenager. I know she has some sort of ongoing Snapchat streak with friends, and she's even saving up for a new iPhone. Normal kid stuff. Of course, I'm not sugarcoating everything. There are still rough days, angry outbursts, more than a few battles. But I'm cautiously optimistic. She doesn't call my husband dad, and maybe she never will. That's more than okay. What matters is giving her the space to build whatever life she wants from here on out. We've tried very hard to show her just how brave she is for speaking up about what happened. Once her testimony was finished, my husband came home with 6 different tubs of ice cream and declared it an ice cream for dinner night. It was so goofy and so sweet, it honestly felt like one of those embarrassing family moments every teenager both dreads and secretly loves. I even caught a little of that classic teenage "oh my god, Dad, you are so embarrassing" look from her for the first time. Funnily enough, only 1 tub was actually finished. I think the rest are still languishing in our freezer. We try, every single day. I won't pretend we're perfect parents or guardians. Sometimes I miss our old life, the one before criminal cases and the relentless churn of the legal system. Even being only indirectly involved takes its toll on you. It's a kind of background noise you can never turn off. There are times when it tests our patience, especially when she has contact with her mom. They haven't met face to face, but they do have occasional phone calls, something the professionals suggested, though my husband hated the idea at first. I understand, I'd happily see her mother disappear and never resurface, but this isn't about my feelings. Whenever Anne talks to her mom, we're in the room and the call is always on speaker. Afterward, Anne's therapist is always available, either online or in person, within a few days to talk things through. We want her to know she's in control. Cutting off her mother is ultimately her choice. All we can do is guide her and make sure she has all the support she needs to make those decisions for herself. There are days I mess up. Like that time a few months ago when both the little ones were down with a brutal stomach flu, and I was barely hanging on, exhausted, short-tempered, trying to keep it together while caring for sick kids. I asked Anne for a hand, and she snapped at me, "You're not my mom," or something similar. In that moment, I lost it. I shot back something I shouldn't have, something about being grateful not to be, considering her mother's actions. Not my finest hour. I apologized and walked on eggshells around her for weeks. It was deserved. Still, she's a good kid. I truly believe that, despite everything, underneath the trauma and anger and silence, we're just trying to make sure she survives this, and maybe, someday, even thrives. Update 4. I'm not sure where to even begin with this one. The last few months felt like we were finally finding our rhythm. Anne was settling in, therapy was helping, and for the first time in over a year, I actually let myself believe we might have turned a corner. I should have known better. It started 3 weeks ago when Anne came home from school acting strange. Not her usual withdrawn quiet, but jittery, almost manic. She kept checking her phone obsessively and jumping at every sound. When I asked if everything was okay, she just muttered something about drama at school and disappeared into her room. My husband noticed it too, but we figured it was typical teenage stuff, maybe boy problems or friend issues. Then last Tuesday happened. I was home alone with the little ones when someone started pounding on our front door. Not knocking, pounding. When I looked through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize, probably mid-30s, with stringy blonde hair and wild eyes. She was screaming something I couldn't quite make out. I called through the door asking what she wanted, and she started shrieking about how I was harboring her daughter and that she was calling the police. My blood went cold. This wasn't Anne's mother. We'd seen her in court photos and video calls. This was someone else entirely. I managed to calm her down enough to get some coherent information. Turns out, Anne had been staying at this woman's house after school for weeks, telling her that we were abusive and that she needed somewhere safe to go. And had apparently spun this elaborate story about how my husband hit her and I locked her in her room without food. The woman, let's call her Lisa, had been feeding Anne, letting her do homework there, even bought her new clothes. The worst part? Anne had been asking Lisa if she could move in permanently. Lisa had started looking into how to report us to CPS. When Anne got home that afternoon and saw Lisa's car in our driveway, she went white as a sheet. The confrontation was brutal. Anne broke down crying, admitting she'd made everything up because she just wanted to feel normal and Lisa's house felt like the family she'd never had. Lisa has 2 daughters around Anne's age, and apparently their house was everything Anne thought a real family should look like: loud, chaotic, with a mom who bakes cookies and doesn't flinch when kids slam doors. My husband was devastated. After everything we'd been through, everything we'd sacrificed, Anne still saw us as the enemy. Lisa left in tears, feeling completely manipulated. And I just stood there wondering if we were failing her in ways we couldn't even see. The family therapist called it a trauma response, and testing boundaries to see if we'd abandon her like everyone else had. She said it was actually progress, believe it or not, because it meant Anne was starting to trust us enough to push back. But it sure didn't feel like progress in the moment. We've had to implement new rules now. Anne has to be home by 4 p.m. on school days, and if she wants to go anywhere, we need to meet the parents first. She's furious about it, says we're treating her like a prisoner. Maybe we are, but I don't know what else to do. The really twisted part? After all this drama, Anne finally called my husband Dad for the first time. It happened during one of their therapy sessions when she was crying about how scared she was that we'd send her away. The therapist said she could see his face just light up, even though the whole conversation was about Anne's fear of abandonment. I keep wondering if we're in over our heads. Some days I look at Anne and see this resilient, funny teenager who survived hell and is slowly learning to trust again. Other days I see a stranger who's capable of manipulating an entire family into thinking we're monsters. The trial for her mother and the boyfriend got pushed back again, something about new evidence. Anne's lawyer says it could be another 6 months before it's resolved. 6 more months of this limbo, of not knowing if Anne will have to testify again, of walking on eggshells every time her mother calls. My husband started seeing his own therapist after the Lisa incident. He admitted he's been struggling with resentment, not toward Anne, but toward the situation, toward how our life has completely changed. Some nights he comes home from work and just sits in his car for 20 minutes before coming inside, trying to psych himself up for whatever crisis might be waiting. I get it. I really do. There are days when I miss being able to leave the house without a detailed explanation of where I'm going and when I'll be back. Days when I want to have a conversation with my husband that isn't about therapy appointments or school problems or legal proceedings. But then yesterday happened. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard Anne laughing, really laughing, at something my youngest had said. When I peeked around the corner, she was sitting on the floor building blocks with both kids, making these elaborate castles and letting them knock them down. My 4-year-old was giggling so hard he could barely breathe. When she noticed me watching, she didn't freeze up or leave like she usually does. She just smiled and said, "He's pretty funny for a little kid." It was such a normal, sisterly thing to say, and for just a moment, it felt like we might actually be a real family. I know we're not out of the woods yet. There will probably be more incidents, more setbacks, more moments where I question every decision we've made. But maybe that's what family actually is, not the perfect picture I had in my head, but this messy, complicated, sometimes painful thing that you choose to stick with anyway. And still saving up for that iPhone, by the way. She's about halfway there, working odd jobs around the neighborhood. My husband secretly added $50 to her envelope last week when he thought no one was looking. Update 5. I honestly don't know how to write this without sounding completely insane, but here we are. Everything I thought I knew about our situation just got flipped upside down, and I'm sitting here at 3 a.m. trying to make sense of it all. Remember Lisa, the woman who came pounding on our door because Anne had been lying to her about us being abusive? Well, she reached out 2 weeks ago, not angry this time, apologetic, actually. She said she'd been thinking about it nonstop and wanted to understand what really happened. My husband was against meeting with her, but something in her voice made me agree to coffee. What Lisa told me changed everything. And hadn't just been going to her house after school, she'd been showing up there for months, way before the incident I wrote about. Lisa thought Anne was just a lonely kid from the neighborhood at first, but Anne had been carefully crafting this whole elaborate story about her real family that she missed desperately. She told Lisa her name was Emma, that her parents had died in a car accident, and that she was living with distant relatives, us, who didn't really want her. The worst part? Anne had been asking Lisa to help her run away. Not back to her mother, Anne wanted Lisa to help her disappear completely. Lisa had actually started researching how to help runaway teens when she discovered the truth about who Anne really was. But here's where it gets complicated. During our coffee, Lisa mentioned something that made my blood run cold. She said Anne had been asking detailed questions about Lisa's ex-husband, when he visited, where he worked, whether he ever stayed overnight. At the time, Lisa thought it was just curiosity, but now she wondered if Anne had been planning something. I didn't tell my husband about the meeting initially. I needed time to process what Lisa had shared, and honestly, I was terrified about what it might mean. But then Anne started acting strange again. She kept asking when my husband would be working late, whether we had any big trips planned, stuff like that. When I asked why, she'd just shrug and say she was trying to keep track of everyone's schedule. Last Friday, I found out why. I came home early from grocery shopping, forgot my wallet and had to turn around, and found Anne in our bedroom. Not just in our bedroom, but rifling through my husband's dresser drawers. When she saw me, she went white and started stammering about looking for batteries for her calculator. I didn't buy it. After she left for school the next Monday, I checked what she might have been looking at. Nothing seemed missing, but his old phone, the one he keeps in his nightstand drawer for emergencies, was moved. When I turned it on, someone had been going through his old text messages and photos. Messages from before we were married, photos of him with Anne's mother, stuff from when Anne was little. I confronted her that afternoon, and she completely broke down. Through tears, she admitted she'd been trying to find evidence that my husband had lied about his relationship with her mother. She was convinced that he'd abandoned them for selfish reasons, not because her mother had kept him away. She thought if she could prove he was lying, she could justify. I don't even know what. Running away, maybe. Or getting us in trouble somehow. But then she said something that made everything click into place. She'd also been looking for proof that my husband was cheating on me. Because in her mind, if he could cheat on me, it would prove he'd probably cheated on her mother too. She wanted to be the one to tell me, to protect me the way no one had protected her. The strangest part? She seemed almost disappointed when she didn't find anything incriminating. My husband took this news about as well as you'd expect. He was hurt that after everything, and still saw him as the villain. But our therapist helped us understand that Anne wasn't just testing boundaries anymore, she was actively trying to recreate the chaos and abandonment she was familiar with. If she could make us angry enough to send her away, it would confirm what she'd always believed about herself. We decided to address it head on. My husband sat Anne down and showed her everything she'd been looking for: old court documents about child support, text messages from her mother refusing visits, even the nasty voicemails her mother had left over the years. It was brutal to watch. Anne started crying when she realized how many times her mother had lied to her about why her father wasn't around. But the real breakthrough happened 3 days later. Anne came to me while I was folding laundry and asked if my husband had ever cheated on me. When I said no, she asked how I could be so sure. I told her that trust isn't about being certain someone will never make mistakes, it's about building something strong enough to survive imperfection. Then she asked the question that broke my heart: what if I mess up really bad? Like, worse than the Lisa thing? Would you guys send me away? I dropped the shirt I was folding and looked at her directly. "And there is nothing you could do that would make us abandon you. Nothing. We're not going anywhere, and neither are you." She started crying then, not the angry, frustrated tears we'd seen before, but these quiet, exhausted sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. For the first time since she'd moved in with us, she let me hug her. Really hug her, not just the awkward side squeeze we usually managed. The trial got delayed again, but Anne's lawyer thinks it might actually be good news. Apparently, her mother's boyfriend is considering a plea deal, which would mean Anne might not have to testify at all. My husband is cautiously optimistic, but I can tell he's preparing for the worst-case scenario. In lighter news, Anne finally saved enough for that iPhone, and my husband threw in the extra money for a good case because, in his words, teenagers and expensive electronics don't mix. She rolled her eyes but seemed pleased. She even asked if she could put his number in her phone as dad. Still doesn't call him that out loud, but it's progress. She's also been spending more time with her siblings. Last weekend, she taught my daughter how to braid friendship bracelets, and they spent hours making them for everyone in the family. And even made one for me with our initials on it. It's sitting on my nightstand right now, and I honestly treasure it more than any expensive jewelry. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for some new crisis to emerge. Maybe that's just life now, this constant state of cautious optimism mixed with low-level anxiety. But for right now, in this moment, we're okay. Anne is okay. And maybe that's enough.